Welcome back to the Whispers of the Dark, where our nighttime ritual series drags you deeper into the shadows of the unknown. We've stared into Black Hollow's cursed mirror, summoned Bloody Mary in Salem's haunted bathrooms, survived the midnight game in Ashwood's darkened halls, opened a door to the dead with a Ouija board in Port Haven, called Charlie Charlie in Redstone's desert schoolhouse, and crossed into another dimension in Detroit's Grandview Towers. But tonight, we're not just inviting something into our world or stepping into theirs. We're sitting face to face with the unknown in a ritual that tests your mind, your courage, and your soul. It's called Three Kings, and it's played in a forgotten farmhouse in rural Lancaster, Pennsylvania. They say it lets you speak to spirits, shadows, or something worse. But once you sit in the king's chair, there's no running from what you see. Lancaster, Pennsylvania, is Amish country. Rolling fields, horse-drawn buggies, and quiet nights where the stars burn bright. But beyond the postcard charm lies a darker history, whispered by locals who've lived here for generations. On the outskirts of town sits the old Miller farmhouse, abandoned since 1989. The story goes that the Miller family, parents and 3 kids, vanished one winter night. Neighbors found the house untouched. Dinner on the table, candles burned to stubs, and 2 mirrors facing each other in the basement, a chair between them. Scratched into the floor was a phrase, "We see." The police called it a runaway case, but the townsfolk knew better. Since then, the farmhouse has been a ghost story, a dare for teens chasing thrills. When the Three Kings ritual spread online, Lancaster kids started sneaking into the basement, thinking it was just a spooky game. Most left shaken, muttering about shadows in the mirrors. Some never left at all. Caleb was 17, a senior at Lancaster High with a restless streak and a knack for fixing cars. He'd grown up hearing the Miller farmhouse stories, but he brushed them off as small-town nonsense. His girlfriend, Mia, was the opposite, a bookworm who loved folklore, always scribbling in her journal about local legends. Their friend Owen was a tech geek, forever tinkering with drones and streaming his ghost hunts on Twitch. Rounding out the group was Lila, Mia's older sister, a college sophomore home for winter break, with a sharp tongue and a fascination with the occult. One snowy December night, with Christmas lights twinkling in town, they were bored, crowded in Caleb's garage, sipping hot cocoa and scrolling through Reddit. Mia found a thread about Three Kings, the rules laid out like a recipe for madness. "This sounds intense," she said, her eyes gleaming. Owen snorted, adjusting his glasses. "It's just mirrors and candles, optical illusion." Lila leaned forward, her voice low. "I knew someone who tried it. They don't talk anymore." Caleb, eager to impress Mia, grinned. "Let's do it. The Miller farmhouse is perfect." Mia hesitated, her journal clutched tight, but the group's excitement pulled her in. "Okay," she said, "but we follow the rules exactly." The Three Kings ritual is a labyrinth of rules designed to keep you safe or trap you if you slip. You need a basement with no windows, 3 chairs, 2 large mirrors, a candle, a lighter, a bucket of water, and a fan. Start at 3:30 a.m. Set up the chairs in a triangle. 1 for you, the king, 1 for the queen, 1 for the fool. Place the mirrors facing each other so you see infinite reflections when you sit in the king's chair. Light the candle, hold it, and keep the lighter in your pocket. The fan and water are your escape tools. If things go wrong, blow out the candle, splash water, and turn on the fan to break the ritual. At 3:33 a.m., sit in the king's chair, stare into the mirror, and wait. If it works, the queen or the fool, spirits, shadows, or something else, will appear in the mirrors answering questions only you can hear. Don't look away from the mirror. Don't touch the other chairs. Don't let the candle go out. And if you hear a voice that isn't the queen or fool, end the ritual immediately. Lancaster kids added their own rule. Don't play in the Miller farmhouse. But Caleb and his friends were too bold to care. The Miller farmhouse stood alone in a field, its clapboard siding peeling, windows boarded, the air heavy with the smell of damp earth and decay. Snow crunched under their boots as they broke in through a cellar door, descending into a basement that felt like a tomb. Concrete walls, cobwebs, and a faint hum, like the house was breathing. The old setup was still there. 2 mirrors, dusty but intact, facing each other, a rickety chair between them, and scratches in the floor that looked too fresh. Mia shivered, clutching her journal. This feels wrong. Owen set up his drone camera, streaming to a handful of viewers, its red light blinking in the dark. Lila lit the candle, her hands steady but her eyes darting to the shadows. Caleb arranged the chairs, joking to ease the tension. Who's ready to meet some ghosts? They placed the fan and water bucket nearby, a lighter in each pocket, and checked their phones. 3:29 a.m. At 3:30, they sat in silence, the candle's flame casting jittery shadows. At 3:33, Caleb took the king's chair, staring into the mirror, his reflection stretching into infinity. The first minute was quiet. The only sound the faint hum of Owen's drone. Caleb's reflection stared back, his face pale in the candlelight. Then the mirror flickered, like a TV losing signal. Mia, watching from the side, whispered, "Do you see anything?" Caleb nodded, his voice tight. "There's someone." In the left mirror, a figure appeared. Not Caleb, but a woman, her face obscured by long, dark hair. The Queen, he thought, his heart racing. He asked, "Who are you?" The figure didn't move, but a voice, soft like wind through leaves, answered in his head. "I am what you seek." Mia scribbled in her journal, her pen shaking. Owen's drone glitched, its feed cutting to static, his viewers spamming WTF. Lila gripped the bucket, muttering, "Stay focused, Caleb." The right mirror flickered, and another figure appeared. A man, his face blurred, his head tilted at a wrong angle. "The fool," Caleb asked. "What do you want?" The man's voice, sharp and grating, echoed in his mind. "To play." The candle flame stretched, nearly touching the ceiling, and the basement grew colder, their breath fogging in the air. The ritual took a turn. The Queen's voice grew louder, overlapping with the fool's, both speaking at once. "Stay! Leave! See! Hide!" Caleb's reflection warped, his eyes darkening, his mouth twisting into a smile he didn't make. Mia gasped. "Caleb, your face—" He didn't answer, his gaze locked on the mirror. Owen's drone crashed, its propellers spinning wildly before stopping. The scratches on the floor glowed faintly, forming new words. "You see?" Lila shouted, "End it, Caleb!" But he was frozen, the candle wax dripping onto his hand, burning his skin without a flinch. The mirrors vibrated, their reflections multiplying, dozens of Caleb's, Queens, and fools all moving out of sync. A third voice, not the Queen, not the fool, came from behind him, deep and guttural. "Sit with us!" Mia screamed, grabbing the water bucket, but it tipped over, the water evaporating into steam. The fan wouldn't turn on, its blades stuck. Owen fumbled with his lighter, trying to relight the candle, but it snuffed out, plunging them into darkness. The basement felt alive, the air thick with whispers. Caleb's voice, but not his, echoed, "I see them now." Mia's flashlight flickered, revealing shadows on the walls, too many, too tall, circling them. Lila grabbed Mia's journal, tearing pages, shouting, "Break the mirrors!" But the glass wouldn't crack, reflecting endless versions of the group, each one distorted. Owen with no eyes, Lila bleeding from her mouth, Mia clawing at her face. Jamal's spray can rolled across the floor, spraying red paint that formed words. "Three kings." The third voice laughed, a sound like breaking glass. and chairs shook, the queen's and fool's chairs tipping over. Caleb stood, his movements jerky like a puppet, and walked toward the mirrors, reaching for his reflection. Mia tackled him, screaming his name, but his skin was ice cold, his eyes empty. Owen relit the candle with his last match, the flame weak but enough to cast light. Lila dragged Caleb back, splashing him with the last drops of water, and the mirrors went still, the voices fading to a hum. They bolted up the stairs, dragging Caleb, who was limp, muttering, "They're still here." The farmhouse door slammed shut behind them, locking itself. Snow fell heavily, covering their tracks as they stumbled to Caleb's truck. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembling, but he wouldn't speak. Mia's journal was gone, left in the basement. Owen's drone footage was corrupted, showing only static with 3 figures, woman, man, and something else, standing in the mirrors. They swore never to return, but the ritual clung to them. Caleb stopped fixing cars, staring at mirrors for hours, whispering, "I'm not alone." Mia's dreams were filled with the queen's face, her journal pages appearing under her bed, scrawled with "Sit." Owen's tech failed constantly, his screens flickering with reflections that weren't his. Lila was the worst. She started seeing shadows in every mirror, car rear views, her phone screen, even puddles. One night, she drove to the farmhouse, a mirror in her passenger seat. Her car was found in the field, empty, the mirror shattered, the words "We see" scratched into the shards. The Miller farmhouse still stands, its basement locked but never secure. Lancaster kids dare each other to play Three Kings, but few do. At 3:33 a.m., neighbors hear whispers from the fields, and the farmhouse windows glow faintly like candlelight. If you're brave enough to look, you might see 3 shadows in the basement, waiting for a new king. So have you ever heard of 3 kings? Maybe you've stared into a mirror too long, seeing something that wasn't you, or heard a whisper in the dark you couldn't place. Drop your creepiest stories in the comments. I'll read the scariest one in our next Nighttime Rituals video. If you're hooked on these terrifying tales, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. Our next ritual will freeze your soul, so brace yourself. Until then, keep your mirrors covered, because the kings are always watching.